people in Iran and more than 1,500 people in Lebanon. A woman who's originally from Penticton says she will take legal action after spending nearly 3 weeks in custody held by U.S. immigration authorities. Tanya Warner and her 7-year-old daughter were released on bond last week. Warner says she and her daughter were held in 2 facilities, and she raised concerns about her daughter's well-being during their detention. She says her concerns were dismissed by officers, and she'll now be pursuing legal action.
I have to press charges with the civil rights attorneys to press charges for child neglect and abuse against my daughter.
Warner says she will also be working with her lawyer to get an ankle bracelet removed, which she says ICE agents informed her she must wear. Just days after announcing Kanye West as its headliner, a music festival in London has cancelled the event. This comes after the American rapper was denied entry into the UK. Prime Minister Keir Starmer says West should never have been invited to headline the festival. West, who now goes by Ye, has caused outrage for his anti-Semitic, racist, and pro-Nazi comments. The Wireless Festival says it will refund all ticket holders. Records and CDs appear to be making a comeback in Canada despite streaming and other digital services. Sales of vinyl have been picking up. Troy Charles caught up with the owners of a Vancouver record store who've been watching the changing trends.
According to Music Canada, since 2019, vinyl sales in the country have grown by 240%.
Business is booming.
Ben Frith runs Vancouver's Neptune Records with his dad, Rob. Over 45 years in the business, Rob has seen it all.
You know, we had our loyal clientele, but, you know, it was really tough for quite a while, quite a few years.
Rob says momentum around vinyl really picked up during the pandemic, and it has not slowed.
I keep waiting for the bubble to burst, but it doesn't seem to.
Ben credits the kids for spearheading the physical media boom.
The younger generation is probably the fastest expanding market, whether it be that they're getting into vinyl or more recently, quite a bit into CDs.
That was on full display as we ran into 11-year-old Oliver Barbeau.
My dad got me a little Discman, and I've been listening to CDs, and I was like, hey, this is awesome. So, yeah, I just started collecting, and I love CDs.
Whether it's a compact disc or vinyl record, consumers can't keep their hands off them. Troy Charles, CBC News, Vancouver.
That's the CBC News from Vancouver. More news in half an hour. Turning to the forecast now for Metro Vancouver and the South Coast. Mainly sunny today and a high of 12. Tonight, clear skies with a low down to 5. Tomorrow, we're expecting more sunshine and a few degrees warmer. Sunny and warm Thursday and Friday, then a chance of showers on Saturday. Right now in Abbotsford, 8 degrees and mostly sunny. 2 with a few clouds in Whistler, and in Vancouver, 7 degrees and mainly sunny. This is CBC Radio 1.
I'm Tom Power. Welcome to Q. Have you ever stopped and really looked at something in nature? It's hard to do with your phones these days, but you know, you don't just glance at it, you don't take a picture. You stop what you're doing and you look at like a bird on a branch or a squirrel in a field or the way light hits a tree. It's a rare thing to do, but Robert Bateman has been doing that his whole life. And for 95 years, it has produced some of the most beloved paintings in Canadian history. He is the most famous wildlife painter in the world. He has the Order of Canada, but he has never once been invited to show at the National Gallery of Canada. He'll tell you why he thinks that is, and why he's still fighting for the planet. He spent a lifetime painting. That's coming up. Plus, new music from Montreal's Magi Merlin. All that on Q. So even if you don't know the name Robert Bateman, like the Canadian painter Robert Bateman, I still think there's a good chance you may have seen his work. Like even if you got your phone out right now or your computer out, maybe if not if you're driving, but if you Google Robert Bateman, I think you might go like, oh yeah, that guy. Weirdly, I will say if you've gone to like a dentist's office or like a corporate headquarters, you've probably seen his work. I don't know, like a red cardinal popping up against a snowy salt spring backdrop. Or like a sleepy lion watching over its pride in sub-Saharan Africa, all painted in beautiful, intricate, exquisite detail. That's Robert Bateman. He's been a dedicated artist and naturalist since his early days in Ontario, focusing on wildlife, landscapes, and portraits. His most popular works are almost like photographs in their beautiful representation of the world's habitat. Which makes sense when you hear him talking about environmental education, engagement with the natural world. Caught between his passion for the planet and his incredible artistic skill, Robert is not only the most famous and successful wildlife painter in the world, he also might be the most misunderstood. Let me explain. There's a documentary called The Art of Adventure about Robert Bateman's friendship with the biologist Bristol Foster. It peels back the layers of how Robert, in his early years, fell deeply in love with the world around him and launched a lifelong fight to protect nature. And how for him that meant painting in a style that fans loved, but art critics and like the art world, what he calls the priesthood, didn't take seriously, dismissed, diminished. I'll give you an example. Robert has received the Order of Canada, but has never been invited to show at the National Gallery of Canada. So this documentary is screening across the country now. You can visit artofadventuremovie.com to find a screening near you. Robert Bateman is now 95 years old, calls Salt Spring Island, BC his home, has not slowed down, is still painting all the time, and is still fighting for this planet's survival. I was so happy that Robert dropped by the CBC when he was in Vancouver last year to talk about how he fell in love with nature, how he ended up a painter, and why it's important to still seek out a quiet moment in nature every now and then. Here's my conversation with Robert Bateman. Robert, how are you? Thanks for being here.
I am well, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Did I hear you had a dog named after one of the premiers of Newfoundland?
Yeah, we called him Smallwood, yes. Yes, he was a very big dog, but we still called him Smallwood. He was a Labrador, but his grandmother was a Newfoundland, so he was 110 pounds.
I love that you named him after Joey Smallwood.
Yeah, I did geology at university, and I did a geological survey work from the middle of Newfoundland, which is a place called Badger. It's a whistle stop on the railway.
Yeah, a lot of lumber work around in Badger.
And then we worked absolutely straight north up to Springdale, if you've heard, which I guess you've heard of too.
Yeah, I know. I've been to Badger and I've been to Springdale.
Right.
You and me both. That's it. Just the two of us.
Where you to, By? Stereotuno comes where you're at.
That's, pretty good. I don't have any Salt Spring lingo, but I'll work on it.
That puts me in mind of the first fly I tied. Just the same as you put a hook in a Plymouth Rock can and throw it out in the water. you might have been able to understand that.
No, I got it. Yeah, that's...
Put a hook in a Plymouth Rock can and throw it out in the water.
That's pretty good, Bob. Yeah, it sounds like three of my uncles. It's a pleasure to talk to you. I tell you, I loved reading, I loved watching the documentary, and I loved getting to know your work a little bit. And you were talking about, being out in Newfoundland and studying geology. And it strikes me that even when you were a kid, man, when you were very, very young, kids were into sports, and you even then were into nature and into bird watching.
Yeah, I was never into sports. I didn't, and I still don't like games. I barely even like playing games with the grandchildren. I think it's because I'm a poor loser. I felt miserable losing. And I like watching other people play games, but I just don't like playing games myself.
So what were you doing? You were going out into the woods and you were walking around?
Yeah, I am a bit of an oddball, but I'm not a loner. And luckily at high school, which is Forest Hill High School in Toronto, I had two buddies who were both avid bird watchers. And so the three of us would go birding almost every weekend, hop on our bicycles, and you could quickly reach the edge of Toronto back in those days. So I had those two buddies, and so I didn't feel totally alone. I also had a girlfriend.
Right. That'll help. Were you sketching though? Were you drawing? Like, were you
Yes.
out in nature? Were you sketching and drawing the birds?
Yeah, I got serious when I was 12. That's when I had my first bird list, and I have sketchbooks from the age of 12 until the present. Where I still keep sketchbooks when I'm on trips. I don't don't go doing sketches around home. I'm too busy working on commissions and other things. There are two major paintings that I do every year that I feel kind of committed to. They're the big sort of international shows. One is Birds in Art, that is centered in Wausau, Wisconsin, of all places, and the other one is the Society of Animals Artists. So I do two major pieces to show my peers that I'm still alive. And for those, it's kind of fun because I like to surprise people and do what's not necessarily predictable.
But what was the goal for yourself, though, when, like, because you went to U of T and you just told me that you were out, you were studying in the fields and stuff like that. Like, what did you envision for yourself as a young fella?
Well, I just always wanted to have adventures in nature, and I always wanted to do art, but I never thought that art would be a career. And so I went into high school teaching. I took geography as my major, honor geography at University of Toronto, so I could get free trips into the wilderness to paint, which worked out really well. I got to the Arctic several times, and one of the places in the Arctic I visited, we had Inuit guides, and were two white men and two Inuits guiding us there, and they told us their people had never walked on that land before, and we knew no white men had. And so in one or two places, but of course this is back in the 50s, you can't do this anymore. We were walking on land that no human had ever set foot on.
And then in 57, so this is sort of the story in the documentary, you and your friend Bristol Foster really take a trip around the world. You travel through Africa and India and Southeast Asia and Australia. You're sleeping in this sort of Land Rover ambulance for a year and a half, and you're documenting people and wildlife and nature, and he has a film camera and your sketch pad.
We began to make our way towards the Serengeti National Park. The park is known the world over for its unique concentration of game, especially in the dry season, when the animals gather around the watering holes.
The documentary I actually mentioned is called The Art of Adventure, and the footage is unbelievable of that trip you guys took. When you got back to Canada, did you have a different outlook on your life?
No, what I did have wasn't on my life. It was a fuller appreciation for all the different ways of life of people all over the world. I remember thinking, because we had spent 5 days with the so-called pygmies in the Ituri forest in what was then the Belgian Congo. I had an opinion they were perfect people, because they worshipped the forest. They didn't destroy it. They would move through the forest hunting game. They were hunter-gatherers, and they when the game got a little hard to find, they would move on. Unlike white man who scrapes the bottom of the barrel and sort of finishes destroying everything, they would just do what was easy, and then they would move on, and so that nature and the forest could recover very, very easily. And that's one of the reasons why I say they were perfect people.
Can you connect the dots between that and not that specific story, but like this trip, sort of like this stage of your life, and going from, because people might not know this, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but you had been doing other forms of art, Impressionism, and you had been interested in Cubism, and then you lean into realistic painting. And I love this quote I read from you where you said you got over your abstract snobbery. What do you mean by abstract snobbery? And connect the dots here. Like, what happened there?
Well, as I say, I was a high school teacher, and we had a group. It's just a fluke of fate from another direction, other stories I don't need to get into. They used to get together 2 or 3 times a year to sing folk songs. We were very serious folk song singers.
Like what kind of songs?
On Top of Old Smoky, The Blue Tail Fly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could go on and on. I could sing a whole bunch of songs.
I lost my true lover for courting too slow.
For a courting so slow.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm talking about. Smoky, all covered with snow. That's my true lover. That's right. And 3 or 4 of the group were art college people, and I never thought I needed to take art. I loved art, but I didn't particularly believe that taking lessons in art was something that I needed. If you're going to be an artist, you've got it in you, and you'll be an artist.
I'm Tom Power. You're listening to Q. You're in the middle of my interview from last year with the Canadian naturalist painter Robert Bateman, who has made his name from painting very realistic, and this is important, accurate depictions of the world around us. Birds, bears, lions, elephants. But this style was something Robert purposefully arrived at after years of more abstract depictions of nature. As you're about to hear, that choice came from a pretty deep analysis of what realism can do for you, the viewer. Actually, even for Robert himself.
Art was following in progressions, and after Impressionism came Post-Impressionism with artists like Matisse and so on, and then finally abstract expressionism with artists like Jackson Pollock, who dribbled great big canvases, and there are other abstract expressionists.
Sure.
All of whom I admire, by the way, and was influenced by them. But then they kind of came to an end. So what else do you do that's never been done before? Well, that becomes kind of a self-defeating. I'm not going to do this. It's been done before. Well, I can't do that. It's been done before. Well, that's a ridiculous way to base what you do. You should do what's in your heart.
But I'm trying to figure out the moment where you pick up the paintbrush and go, I'm not going to do those. Like you said, something like realism and particularity is the only style that suits a naturalist. Like, I'm wondering when you picked up the paintbrush and sort of figured that out and executed it.
The Road to Damascus was an Andrew Wyeth show. Andrew Wyeth didn't care. He didn't care about what was in.
Yeah.
And he just painted his world around him that he loved and he enjoyed, and became now is one of the most best beloved and famous of all American artists in history. One of his most famous ones is called Christina's World. It's a hillside. At the top of the hill is an old gray weathered wooden building, and Christina was crippled, and she is down at the bottom of the hill with her head turned toward the house. She had to crawl down to the mailbox every day to get mail. That was hard, but not nearly as hard as crawling back home again. And so there she is in Wyeth's painting, and that painting just hit me like a ton of bricks. It was absolutely real and detailed, all the blades of grass, but it had all this impact, and it wasn't what you might call decorative art to make you feel good. It made you wonder, it made you think. That was partly my, as I say, sudden change. Hey, you can be a serious artist and still paint realism and detailed.
Yeah.
You don't have to be an abstract artist.
So a million things I want to follow up on there. Like, who gets to determine what a serious artist is? Who gets to determine what art is? What could be more artful than the world around us? What are we missing when we don't look into the world around us? But I'm thinking about what you said there about that. It was so successful. These paintings were so successful. I find the idea of success in you really interesting, because this comes up in the documentary. You're making these really highly realistic portraits of lions, gazelles, and these are creatures you got to see up close in your adventures. They're selling as fast as you can make them. And you talk about it in the documentary that you're conflicted about the paintings going into private collections at the time. Why was that an issue for you? Where does that come from?
Well, I guess it's the genes for teaching. I always I loved. I was a teacher long before I was a teacher. If I'll explain that, I went to the Royal Ontario Museum on Saturday mornings and taught little kids about nature. So I always really loved young people and teaching and spreading the word about nature. And I consider it a mission in life, which is never going to succeed, in having people knowing the names of their neighbors of other species. So you can't just say, oh, I really love birds. What kind of birds are you talking about? Do you love crows? Well, not quite so much as I love robins. Do you know that there's another bird out in the west that's a lot like a robin called a varied thrush, and so on. So it's all that particularity in knowing the names that I considered a mission in life.
Right.
And that's when my art also had to show this how you could tell specifics about the creatures you were painting.
Right. So then if I'm following you correctly, if the work only got into private collections, if the work was selling for $4 or $5 million and only the very wealthy could have it and there was only one of them, then people would.
Well, it doesn't sell for that high anyway.
But you know what I mean.
Go ahead.
But you know what I mean. If you had stayed in the private collection world, if you hadn't made prints of your work, like if these were rarer one pieces, then if I'm following you correctly, you wouldn't be able to do that sort of missionary work. People wouldn't be able to see nature. It was making the prints and making your work widely accessible was about sort of that education aspect of it. Is that right?
That's exactly right.
And that way the work you're doing, that sort of missionary work you're doing around nature with these works, is able to reach the average person. You're able to reach more people than you would be if these were sort of more rarefied objects. I understand your mentality.
Yeah, that's kind of my excuse when I'm criticized for doing so many images and so many books and so on.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, because in the documentary I didn't know about any of that. So I mean, like I knew your work because of how well known it is, and in the 70s, you start making these reproductions, more people can afford to have them. It's hugely successful. And you have fans, and you have people getting your autograph and really loving your work. And at the same time, as you mentioned there, you do get this sort of pushback from the quote-unquote contemporary art scene. What do you call it? You called it the priesthood?
Yeah, the priesthood. Yes, yeah. That's right. They have the keys to the kingdom, they think.
What do you make of the way your work was talked about back then?
At first it hurt my feelings, because, I've been lambasted in Maclean. There was a major article in Maclean's attacking me, and also in the Globe and Mail and the Toronto Star and so on. So now...
Why? Why were they attacking you?
They were more... speaking on behalf of the elite, and they thought I'd gone all commercial.
Right.
And I was just in it for the money, which I wasn't. I didn't need to be in it for the money because I was a well-paid high school teacher.
Right.
And a lot of the time I just gave the stuff away. So I'm told that it's a characteristic of Canadian. It's like the nail that sticks his head up, you get hammered down again.
Yeah, the lobster crawling out of the pot. I've heard that before too.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, I bet it would hurt your feelings in the early days. I mean,
it did, but I got over it eventually, and I just say to myself, what do they know?
That's the first part of my conversation with the legendary Canadian painter Robert Bateman. Coming up, more with Robert, but first some music from a fellow Salt Springer from Salt Spring Island, BC. This is Valdi, and Play Me a Rock and Roll Song.